Hello, welcome you all again to the lecture series in political theory. You know, I am Professor H. Srikant. Today, let us discuss about the great Proletarian Cultural Revolution in China. The call for the Cultural Revolution was the most controversial decision that Mao had taken in his lifetime. When the Cultural Revolution was at its peak in China during the mid-1960s, it inspired student movements in different parts of the globe, including in the Europe, America, and even India. But the imperialists and the revisionists across the world denounced the Cultural Revolution. The post-Mao leadership in China also projects the Cultural Revolution as a grave mistake of Mao Tse-Tung. Several books and articles have been written on how the Cultural Revolution promoted anarchy in education system and affected economic growth. How thousands of party leaders, government officials, and intellectuals were humiliated and paraded in the streets, and how people were attacked and killed during the peak days of the Cultural Revolution. So much is written about these aspects. There are scholars who have projected the Cultural Revolution as Mao's strategy to hold on to power somehow and to teach a lesson to those who differed with him. According to them, everything is political and there is nothing ideological about Cultural Revolution. Given these diverse perceptions, it makes sense to probe why Mao took such a decision. Was he wrong in his judgment? Was it all initiated because of the power struggle within Chinese Communist Party? Was it an adventurist and avoidable move? Did Mao Tse-Tung deviate from the basic tenets of Marxism-Leninism when he advocated the Cultural Revolution? These are some of the questions for which we try to find answers in this lecture. To find answers, we need to start with the basic tenets of Marxist understanding of history. In my lecture on historical materialism, I have explained to you that Marxism does not say that the economic base, or what Marxists would call as mode of production as everything. The base does not determine all aspects of life. It is no doubt important, but it is not everything. Superstructure, comprising of legal, political, social, religious, cultural ideas and their corresponding institutions, they are also equally important. See, the relationship between the base and the superstructure is always dialectical. Each of it influences and is influenced by the other. This basic theoretical premise helps us to understand the complex revolutionary processes. True, capitalist crises create the material conditions for the proletarian revolutions. But the actual outbreak of the revolution becomes possible only when political and social, cultural requirements for the revolution are ready. Existence of a revolutionary party equipped with a revolutionary theory is a political precondition for the revolution. But the party cannot do any miracle if the proletariat and other laboring masses are still under the influence of a feudal bourgeois or petty bourgeois ideas and ideologies. Hence, addressing the workers, even Karl Marx once said, "You have the world to win, but before that, you need to change yourself." Political revolution cannot be achieved. And even if achieved accidentally, it cannot last for long unless and until the party and the proletariat are infused with proletarian culture and values. This basic Marxist-Leninist understanding became the base for Mao's Cultural Revolution. The experience of revisionism in Soviet Russia, we discussed about it in 2 video lectures. They showed how deterioration of culture and values facilitated the rise of revisionism and created fertile ground for counter-revolution. Mao Tse-Tung was not there to see the eclipse of socialism in Soviet Russia or the capitalist restoration in his own country, where he led the new democratic revolution to establish people's democracy. But the experience of revisionism in Soviet Russia and his own encounters with the revisionists in the Communist Party of China made it clear to Mao that socialism would not survive without addressing the issue of culture. In my video lecture on Khrushchev, I explained to you Mao's criticism of the Soviet revisionism. Mao began to feel that similar conditions were taking roots even in China, obstructing the socialist paths. To understand it more concretely, let us have a brief idea of developments in China after 1949. In my YouTube lecture on Mao's New Democratic Revolution, I explained to you how the semi-feudal and semi-colonial nature of the then China compelled Mao to advocate a broad alliance of the proletariat, peasants, petty bourgeois, and even the national bourgeoisie against the China's ruling classes, then comprising of the feudal lords, comprador bourgeoisie, and the imperialists. It must be clear to us that Chinese revolution was not a socialist revolution aimed at establishing the dictatorship of the proletariat. It was a democratic revolution led by the proletariat and peasants in colonial conditions. China did not have material conditions necessary for passing over to socialism directly. Hence, Mao advocated people's democracy as a stage that would create necessary conditions in course of time for passing over to socialism. For about 1 decade after the establishment of People's Republic of China in 1949, the national bourgeoisie and the rich peasants were allowed to own and run business under the supervision of the party and the state. It was only in 1958 that Mao announced the Great Leap Forward policy, where he started advocating socialist industrialization and agrarian communes. You know, it was at about this time India also went for the second 5-year plan, which emphasized on industrialization and the public sector. Compared to India, China was then less industrialized and needed badly development of basic industries like iron and steel to build the base for socialist economy. China did not have the technical expertise. Mao refused to take help from the West. The Soviet Union also stopped helping after the Sino-Soviet ideological schism started. So China had to rely entirely on its own resources to build the socialist economy. In such a situation, Mao proposed the formation of agrarian communes to increase agricultural production to meet the growing demand for food in the urban areas where industries started developing. Under the commune system, the farmers give up individual farming and joined the communes to engage in collective production. The villagers were also encouraged to set up small backyard steel furnaces in the communes to produce iron. Economic experiments during the Great Leap Forward had mixed reactions. It no doubt created material conditions for socialist industrialization, but it also caused agrarian problems, which became more complicated because of the natural famines for 3 consecutive years from 1960 to 1962, and also because of the stoppage of aid from the Soviet Union. During this period, there were complaints of forced collectivization and even hunger deaths. All these problems were reviewed in 1962 and appropriate measures were taken to restore agrarian economy. Consequently, you can see that economy recovered substantially between 1963 and 1965. However, this experience of the Great Leap Forward led to emergence of 2 camps within the Communist Party of China. One camp led by Li Xiaoping, Deng Xiaoping, Chen Yun and others. They advocated that class struggle should be given up and priority be given to the increase of production and technological development. They were for revival of individual farming and advocated even seeking help from farmer capitalists and rich peasants for increasing production. As against this time, Mao and his supporters stood for going ahead with the socialist reconstruction. They emphasized on the leading role of politics and advocated that class struggle and expertise go hand in hand. They opposed individual farming and decollectivization and insisted that socialist education should be imparted to prepare the party and the masses to overcome the problems of socialist reconstruction. The group led by Li Xiaoping and Deng argued that in China, the relations of production are advanced, but the forces of production are lagging behind. And hence the emphasis should be given to technology, technocrats, efficiency, and law and order. In contrast, Mao was of the opinion that the primary objective was to develop the relations of production to a level compatible with the requirements of the socialist economy. In order to achieve that, all obstacles, social, cultural, and ideological, standing in the way should be cleared through the socialist education movement. Mao wanted the socialist education movement should be accomplished by involving the masses at every stage, not just through bureaucratic methods. He wanted to impart socialist education in the countryside so that the peasants understand the benefits of collectivization and support it voluntarily. He wanted students and intellectuals and professionals to be part of this agrarian change. He advised the writers and artists to understand life by staying with the masses, the peasants and the proletariat. He expected the doctors to go and live in the rural areas and practice medicine there. He was of the view that the students should learn things through practice, not just through books and theories. Unfortunately, Mao also understood that the things are not so favorable. He observed that the economy was changing, but the masses at large were still believing in ghosts, monsters, kings, emperors, superstitions, and patriarchal ideas of ancient philosophers. The party leaders and governments were hesitant to intervene in the cultural practices of the people. In the name of pragmatic approach, they were even willing to accommodate age-old customs and values and practices incompatible with the socialist principles and practices. The Li and Deng group, fully entrenched in government and bureaucracy, only paid lip service to Mao's leadership, but did little to implement his thoughts. The capitalists and rich farmers were becoming more powerful, taking advantage of this revisionist leadership. Mao realized that although he was the supreme leader of the party, he was not able to execute his ideas, as the government and the bureaucracy were under the control of the revisionists, who were not willing to implement the socialist agenda. Mao did not intervene directly in the activities of the government after 1962. But what triggered Mao into action was an incident when the party newspapers in Beijing refused to print a radical piece criticizing Wuhan. He was a playwright who, in his so-called historical play, criticized the government and romanticized a leader ousted by the party for his anti-socialist stand. When such a play was criticized, the party organs refused to publish it in their newspapers. That incident convinced Mao that the revisionists and the capitalist inroaders have consolidated their authority not only in the cultural centers but also in the party, the state organs, including in the army. Learning from the experience of the Soviet Union, wherein unchecked revisionism, growth of bureaucracy, and absence of socialist consciousness led to deviation from the socialist path. Mao felt that the only way to avert revisionism and prevent China from capitalist restoration is by initiating cultural revolution that would promote revolutionary proletarian culture and values among the people in all walks of life. The task, he thought, has to be accomplished by mobilizing the students and the youths and the proletariat and the peasants against all kinds of decadent ideas, values and practices of the reactionary classes and the revisionist leaders. And this cultural revolution lasted for about 10 years, from 1966 to 1976. But one should understand that this cultural revolution took different forms at different stages. We can actually study cultural revolution in three distinct phases. First phase is from 1966 to 68, when the movement was directed against right revisionists. In the second phase, from 1968 to 71, it was directed against left adventurists. And in the third phase, that is from 1971 to 76, it basically focused on normalization. We now study each of these phases to understand what was accomplished during these distinct stages. Whereas the first stage is the most controversial and the most debated one, as it was directed against the capitalist inroaders and revisionists. The Central Committee approved the 16-point program which gave the ideological premise for the Cultural Revolution. It said, although the bourgeoisie has been overthrown, it is still trying to use old ideas, culture and customs and habits of the exploiting classes to corrupt the masses, capture their minds and endeavor to stage a comeback. The proletariat must do just the opposite. It must meet head-on every challenge of the bourgeoisie in the ideological field and use new ideas, culture, customs and habits of the proletariat to change the mental outlook of the whole society. The Central Committee launched an assault on monsters and demons, meaning the landlords and capitalists, and urged the masses to clear away the evil habits of the old society. The students and youths in China responded to the call and sprang into action, setting up Red Guards in schools and colleges across the country. The Red Guards were asked to destroy 4 olds: old ideas, old customs, old habits, and old culture. The youth were exhorted to speak out freely, air views fully, hold debates, and write big character posters. Stressing on the need for revising the curricula in the spirit of revolutionary socialism, all schools were shut down for a year. The students were asked to go to the countryside and learn from the peasants. And they were all allowed to roam free in the buses and trains. These students and youths began to criticize the party officials, teachers, intellectuals, and even parents who espoused reactionary ideas and deviated from the path of socialism. The youth were soon joined by workers and peasants who began to question the party leaders and officials. The People's Liberation Army, PLA, was also involved in the Cultural Revolution. This phase was very turbulent. In over-enthusiasm, the Red Guards attacked even the genuine leaders and created some tense moments. But Mao felt that it is through mistakes that the people learn. He advised the leaders to take criticism in right spirit and work with renewed strength and dedication for the socialist cause. The public criticism of revisionism did not stop with the lower party leaders and officials. It went up to Li Xiaoping and Deng Xiaoping, considered as number 1 and number 2 capitalist inroaders. Li Xiaoping was arrested and Deng was removed from the post that he was holding. Deng's primary membership in the party was, however, retained because of the intervention of Mao himself. Li Xiaoping died in prison in 1969. So with this, you can say the first phase of the Cultural Revolution came to an end. The second phase of Cultural Revolution had to be directed against the left deviation in the party. Taking advantage of the first phase of Cultural Revolution that targeted the right deviationists, left adventurers like Lin Biao and the now infamous Gang of Four emerged as prominent leaders. They overemphasized on culture and encouraged the Red Guards to attack even innocent party leaders, officials and intellectuals. The left adventurers were mostly responsible for the excesses committed during the first phase of Cultural Revolution. Lin Biao, who was in charge of defense, tried to use the People's Liberation Army against the party diktats. While paving lip service to Mao's thoughts and Mao's leadership, Lin Biao virtually house arrested Mao. Under Lin Biao's influence, the Ninth Party Congress took several wrong decisions and got himself approved as the successor of Mao, much against the very spirit of Marxism. Mao anticipated the danger arising out of PLA becoming an autonomous entity over and above the party and the people. He advocated that the army should be always under the ideological control of the party. Mao was as much against the left deviation as he was against the right deviationists. Hence, he took on Lin Biao, who was trying to flex his muscles, and Mao directly approached the PLA regional commanders to convince them to fall in line with the party's principles or party's line. Lin Biao hatched a conspiracy to kill Mao in a train attack, which however did not materialize. Fearing arrest, Lin Biao tried to escape to Russia with his family, and on his way he died in the air crash in Mongolia in 1971. With this, the second phase of Cultural Revolution against the left deviation came to an end to some extent. The third phase of Cultural Revolution from 1971 to 76 paved the way for restoration of balance between cultural revolution and economic modernization. The 10th National Party Congress, held in 1973, corrected the mistakes of the 9th Party Congress. After the 10th National Party Congress, the central leadership worked to restore unified and collective leadership. The new party constitution adopted at the Congress emphasized that all other organizations, including the army, must accept the centralized leadership of the party. Mao's cult, which had reached its peak in the first phase and which was given a kind of legal sanctity in the 9th Party Congress, was de-emphasized and the party's control was re-established. The 10th Congress acknowledged the right of the masses to criticize the party and the state institutions. It asserted Mao's dictum, revolutions like this, meaning cultural revolution, will have to be carried out many times in the future. But at the same time, the party also emphasized on economic recovery and foreign relations. Zhou Enlai's position as premier was strengthened. Deng Xiaoping was brought back after he tendered apology. The premier Zhou Enlai emphasized on modernization of agriculture, industry, national defense, and science and technology. As such, political and economic situation in China was moving towards normalcy before Mao expired in 1976. This being the summary of the long story of cultural revolution that China experienced during the last 10 years of Mao's life. The critics of Mao only emphasize the first stage of cultural revolution, when the fight was directed against the right deviationists like Li Xiaoping and Deng Xiaoping, who used to emphasize more on economic development and ignored class struggle and cultural issues. But they rarely mention Mao's fight against the left adventurists like Lin Biao, which took place in the second stage of cultural revolution. Mao always stood for a balance between economy and culture, politics and class struggle for him should go alongside economic and technological development. Mao, he knew that cultural revolution cannot continue for an indefinite period, and hence once the right and left deviationists were dealt with, during the last 5 years, China moved back to normalcy and concentrated on modernization and foreign policy. Of course, without compromising in principle on issues of class struggle and proletarian culture. A different matter that Deng Xiaoping, who apologized for his right deviation and returned back to power with the recommendation of Mao Tse-Tung, turned his ire against the Cultural Revolution after Mao's death. Like Khrushchev, who undertook de-Stalinization after Stalin's death, Deng and his followers used anarchy and excesses committed during the first phase of cultural revolution as a pretext to demean the authority of Mao Tse-Tung. Developments after Deng Xiaoping took over the leadership of the party in 1978 show that what started as modernization, or what they called socialism with Chinese characteristics, ended up as authoritarian capitalism with Chinese characteristics. The present leadership in China is socialist only in name, but all that it has been promoting in the name of nationalism today is out and out capitalist in its content. As such, Mao was right in his contention that there were revisionists and capitalist inroaders within the party who were working against the dictatorship of the proletariat and making a way for capitalist restoration. Mao's cultural revolution as a practice may be a failure, but his theorization as to why such cultural revolutions are necessary for socialism will continue to be relevant for the proletarian revolutions in future. This is all what I can say about the cultural revolution. Before I end, I give you some references if you are interested to know more. First, I suggest you to read John Robinson's book, The Cultural Revolution in China, published by Penguin in 1969. He also has an article in International Affairs, volume 44, 1968, with the same title. Then I saw a book review by Hug House, which appeared again in International Affairs in October 1969 issue, where there is discussion about different books and articles which came out during that particular period in the West. Recently, I came across Tan Meng Wa's research work titled Mao Tse-Tung and His Mass Campaigns and Revolutions. He's no Mao sympathizer, but he presents interesting facts from 1949 to 76, giving even the background of all that happened during the Great Leap Forward and how it led to cultural revolution and about different phases of cultural revolution and all that. Coming to India, I found Shivdas Ghosh giving very interesting Marxist-Leninist analysis of the cultural revolution of China and also about 9th and 10th Congress of the Communist Party of China. You can find them in the website of Socialist Unity Center of India, Communist. This is all I have to say about the great proletarian cultural revolution in China. If you find my lectures interesting and useful, subscribe to this channel and inform other like-minded friends interested in political theory. Next week we will meet with a new topic. Till then, bye bye and thank you very much.